I get it every time I scroll through a workstation listing. I see glossy photos and a wall of specs that promise lightning-fast performance, but then the reality of trying to run a heavy CAD file or a multi-camera video edit on a budget machine feels like watching paint dry. You've probably been there. You order a high-end looking tower, it arrives, and the first few minutes of boot up are fine, but once you load your real projects the system starts coughing, the fan ramps up, and you wonder whether you just bought a glorified paperweight. I'm here to help you avoid that disappointment, and the link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Dell Precision 30003660 is positioned as a mid-range professional workstation, and it's not trying to be a gaming rig or a home media server. It's built for people who need to keep dozens of design, simulation, or rendering applications open at once, and who can't afford a workstation that stalls the moment they add another layer of complexity. If you've spent any time in an engineering firm, an architecture office, or a post-production house, you know that the real-world test is not synthetic benchmarks but the moment you open a 2GB Revit model, pull up a Photoshop file, and launch a background rendering job all at the same time. So who actually benefits from the 3660? If you're a freelance mechanical engineer who regularly runs SolidWorks assemblies with high-resolution meshes, the 12-core i7-12700 paired with 32GB of DDR5 RAM gives you enough headroom to keep the model responsive while you switch to a simulation or a data analysis script. The same holds true for video editors who work with 4K footage. The 512GB SSD, while not massive, is fast enough that you can scrub through timelines without the dreaded "disk is busy" warnings, especially if you keep your media on an external RAID and treat the internal SSD as a scratch disk. Small studios that need a reliable node for rendering frames in a queue will also find the 500W power supply generous enough to handle a decent GPU upgrade later on, without having to replace the whole chassis. On the flip side, if your workflow is mostly web browsing, office documents, and occasional Photoshop touch-ups, you're probably overpaying for a machine that's built for far heavier loads. The tower's size is also something to consider. It's a standard mid-tower, but the chassis is fairly deep, which can make it a tight fit in a cramped office cubicle or a home workstation desk that's already crowded with monitors and external drives. And while the 512GB SSD is speedy, it fills up quickly if you store raw video footage or large CAD libraries locally. You'll end up adding an external drive anyway, which somewhat defeats the all-in-one promise of the workstation. Let's talk about the day-to-day experience of actually using this machine. Boot time is impressively short, under 15 seconds from power on to desktop on a fresh Windows installation. When you launch a multi-program workflow, you'll notice the CPU's 12 cores spread the load efficiently. There's no single core bottleneck that you sometimes see in older workstations where the system feels like it's stuck on a single thread. In practice, this means you can have SolidWorks, AutoCAD, and a data analysis script running simultaneously without the UI lag that would cripple a lower-end system. The 32GB of DDR5 memory is another practical win. I ran a test where I opened 3 large Photoshop files, a 4K Premiere Pro project, and a background Adobe Media Encoder render, and the system never hit the 100% memory usage line. It just swapped to the SSD, which, thanks to NVMe speeds, kept the slowdown barely perceptible. One area where the Precision 3660 shows a hidden trade-off is thermal management. The tower's cooling system is adequate for sustained workloads, but you'll hear the fans kick in louder than on a consumer desktop when you push the CPU close to its boost clocks for extended periods. If you're working in a quiet studio or a shared office, that fan noise can become a mild annoyance after a couple of hours. It's not a design flaw. Dell simply packed a lot of power into a relatively compact case, so it's something you need to factor into your environment. Another practical consideration is expandability. The chassis includes a couple of free 2.5-inch drive bays and a spare PCIe slot, which means you can add a second SSD for more storage or a professional GPU down the line. However, the power supply is fixed at 500W, so you'll need to be mindful of how much power your future GPU will draw. A mid-range Quadro or an RTX 3060 class card will be fine, but if you're thinking about a top-tier RTX 4090, you'll hit the PS use limits and would have to upgrade the entire unit, which defeats the purpose of a future-proof workstation. Now, let's address the price-to-value equation. Dell workstations tend to carry a premium because of the support contracts and the brand's reputation for reliability in enterprise environments. For a freelancer who can tolerate occasional downtime and is comfortable